My name is Samantha Danchuk. I am the Assistant Director of the Environmental Planning and Community Resilience Division, and I'm joined today by Greg Ward. He is our Deputy Beach Manager, and Stephanie Kedziff. She is our Sea Turtle Program Manager. And we are trying to provide information to you as early as possible about the forthcoming Segment 2 project and make ourselves available for any questions or comments you have. This project could start as early as next February, but more likely it will start the following year after turtle season in November. So this morning, next slide, please. This morning, we will be accepting questions throughout the presentation. If you would like to type them into the chat window, Stephanie will be monitoring those and make sure that we get all of those questions answered by the end of the presentation. If you would like to follow up with us after the presentation, please email resilience@broward.org anytime. We will be posting regular updates about the beach projects at broward.org/beach renourishment. In fact, there's already the latest status posted there, as well as some great videos about what the construction of the project will look like and what to expect. We will be posting regular updates on social media at Broward ENV and on Facebook, Broward Environment, if you'd like to follow us. When the project actually gets started, we plan on posting daily, if not weekly, to make sure that we're getting updates about where the construction is. We can receive phone calls at 954-519-1270 anytime. If you see something on the beach that you would like to report, or you have any questions about where the construction will be, or need any contacts, we'd be happy to connect with you. And we will also be in regular contact with all of the municipal staff representatives. Each city and town has their own beach representative, and we will be giving them regular updates weekly and daily during construction. And so I am going to ask that Greg Ward begin our presentation and give you a little background about the beach management program before we get into the details of the project. Greg?
Okay, thank you, Sam. Yeah, I'm here just to talk for a little bit about the history of the beach management program here and the history of the Broward County beach management efforts and why we're here. And so looking at this slide, is beaches, they're an integral component to the county. It's our goal to maintain healthy and pristine wide beaches for tourists, residents, and marine life alike. And so maintaining our beaches is vital in that they function to enhance both our environment and our economy by providing critical habitat, recreational space for tourists. They draw approximately 8.5 billion annually in direct and indirect impacts, and they protect upland, 4 billion worth of upland infrastructure. And so what got us here? Well, many of the beach management issues began with the deepening of local inlets. And one of these issues affecting the whole of the Southeast Florida to some extent is that offshore Atlantic waves tend to wrap around the Bahama Banks and approach our shores from the north, which means that littoral sand transport within the nearshore zone tends to lean in a southerly direction about 80% of the time. And so with dredging and deepening of the inlets, the net southerly movement of sand was typically blocked to some extent, disturbing downdrift sediment budgets. And so over the years, many ad hoc efforts were made to stop the resultant beach retreat, with groins and hard armoring most prevalent. For the most part, they weren't effective. While they may have stabilized a small part of the beach, due to the limited amount of sediment within the coastal system, they typically only aided in accelerating erosion rates. And so at one point, it's estimated that there were over 230 groins distributed along the county's coast. And because of the need for expensive repair and rehabilitation, a majority of these structures eventually ended up neglected, defunct, and simply hazardous. And so by the 1960s, the beaches were in such a state that recognizing the need for a coordinated effort to combat the erosion, the Broward County Shore Protection Project, also known as the federal project, was authorized under the Rivers and Harbors Act of 1965. And so this act created a framework that allowed the federal government to enter into agreement for cost sharing and reimbursement of planning, design, and construction costs, among other things, for the beach renourishment projects in the county. And so looking at the history of Segment 3 beaches, the shoreline has been renourished 3 times under the federal project, with the last federally, did I say Segment 3? There's Segment 2, sorry. With the last federally reimbursable project in 2016. Looking at the 2013 project above, in response to Hurricane Sandy, that was an FCCE project, and FCCE is not necessarily carried out under the SPP, the Federal Shore Protection Project. It's in response, and it's implemented by the Federal Flood Control and Coastal Emergency Act. And the 2013 one was implemented in response to Hurricane Sandy. And I point this out because the project that we're meeting about today will be managed by the United States Corps of Engineers under the same FCCE Act authority. It was authorized in response to Hurricane Irma in 2017. However, other than that, the one important distinction between the 2013 FCCE project and this one is that the 2013 project was implemented as an above mean high water only project. And so what that means is that sand placement is limited, or was in 2013, limited to the dry beach above the mean high water line. And typically these kinds of projects are built this way to speed project implementation and avoid otherwise lengthy design and or government consultations. And as with the 2013 project, provide more immediate relief to eroded beaches and at peril communities in the aftermath of a storm, such as Hurricane Sandy. And so the project that we are talking about today will be a mix of full design template as built with the federal SPP projects typically, and above mean high water sections defined as reaches in the graphic on this slide that receive sand dependent on beach profile needs and other shoreline conditional factors. And also the project that we're currently planning will be greater in scope than both the 2013 and the 16 project, with shoreline length expansions into reaches 1 and reaches 3 as depicted on this map here, and with construction of the full design template where feasible. The volume of sand restored to the Segment 2 beaches under this currently proposed FCCE project is therefore anticipated to require approximately 400,000 cubic yards. Somebody's mic is live, if you could please mute. Therefore anticipated to require nearly 400,000 cubic yards of sand, contrasted to the 2013 FCCE project, which was 135,000 cubic yards, and the 2016 full federal project, which was 700,000 cubic yards. And so this is just an example of the difference between what an above mean high water project and a full template project might look like. This isn't in Segment 2. This is a park just south of the jetty. But so the screen on the left there is what an above mean high water restoration might look like. And then the screen on the right is what a full project template fill might look like. And with the above mean high water, the goal is primarily to add elevation to the beach. And so this is actually from the last 2016 federal design template. And it's just giving you an idea of what, if you are in a full design template area, what you might expect. Typically adds approximately or greater than 50 feet to your beach at any given location. It varies based on site conditions. And so with that, I'm going to hand it back to Sam Danchuk to give you an update on what to expect with the upcoming beach project. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. So as Greg described, this project is being constructed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers instead of a contractor contracted by the county with city participation. And the significance there is that this project, because it's a repair project, is actually saving, well, us money. Essentially, the funds are not coming from the county and the cities. The funding will come 100% from the federal government. And this particular project is estimated to cost as much as $29.5 million in order to place about 400,000 cubic yards of sand via a truck haul project along about 5 miles of the beach from Pompano through Lauderdale-by-the-Sea and through Fort Lauderdale. We anticipate that the project could begin as early as February 2021. However, it's more likely that the project will begin in November 2021, continue through that winter, and then possibly, if more work needs to be done, continue in the following winter. Next slide, please. So the goals of this project are ultimately to replace losses from Hurricane Irma, to limit disruption of the beach use and traffic patterns, which is why I imagine many of you have joined today's call, and also to avoid environmental impacts and add storm protection to our beaches to ensure that when we do have these hurricanes and when we do have these tropical storms, the erosion isn't so severe that it would cause any damage to property. It's really, really important to maintain our beaches, and our goal is to maintain beaches as wide as 75 feet in width, although that varies. Next slide, please. So the sand itself is coming from sand mines in the center of the state of Florida. And these mines have been pre-approved by the state Florida Department of Environmental Protection. The contractor will have the option of selecting which sand mine to use, and there will be a specified route that they're allowed to use to bring in the trucks of sand. All of the sand must meet very strict requirements related to the sand grain size, the color, how much silt or fine material is in it, how much shell is in it, so that it matches what the sand looks like on the beach today. And so it's very important. We don't have this information yet, but we will on our next update in February. The contractor will provide his plan for controlling the traffic and ensuring that everybody has easy access in and out of their homes, and to minimize disruption as much as possible within the local routes. Next slide, please. So just to confirm, the sand will look like the sand that's on the beach today. And over time, sand does change color slightly. As the sun bakes it, it actually lightens the sand even further. But you can see examples in this photo of sand that has just recently been truck hauled and placed on the beach. And it must match the native sand, which in our case is sand that was previously placed on the beach from previous truck hauls. Next slide, please. So to begin our discussion about staging and access, so the trucks will be bringing sand to the ends of the streets and essentially getting them prepared to be moved onto the beach. There will be multiple points that are used for sand transport, and then there will be fencing erected to make sure that there's secure areas that are the active work zones. And there will be heavy equipment on the beach in order to move the sand and dress the beach, or essentially make it the shape that it needs to be, to create the final shape and slope of the beach. So you may see excavators on the beach. You may see dump trucks full of sand on the beach. You may see other heavy equipment that's needed in order to move the sand around. In some areas where the sand, there may be not space to bring a truck onto the beach, you may actually see a conveyor belt. This was used in one of our last projects, a conveyor belt to move sand from the end of the street onto the beach. Next slide, please. So to describe how the work zones will look, essentially from the street end, the contractor will need to actively be transporting sand up and down the beach and moving its equipment. And so they will be making it very clear where their active work zones are. They will have traffic lanes that are demarked with signage or even temporary fencing, and they'll have safety vehicles that actually go up and down the beach with the trucks, so that there's as little risk as possible for anybody that may be coming across that area and walking on the beach. Next slide, please. So the construction zone itself can be as large as 1,000 feet. It's really, really important that the public stay out of this active construction zone. There will be fencing, there will be signs, there will be, physical guides and people standing there trying to advise people to stay out of the area. I can't emphasize this enough. The trucks are loud. They do have horns that should be on when they're backing up. But it is extremely hard for the truck drivers to see people on the beach when they're driving by. So please do not take any risks and go anywhere past the fencing. We want to make sure that everyone stays safe as part of this project. And sometimes it's really hard to hear horns and trucks on the beach when the waves are really rough. So really just want to emphasize that. If you see an active construction zone, please ask if you can go past it, and please read the signs carefully to keep yourself safe. Next slide, please. So I just want to be clear about where sand will be placed. Greg gave you two examples of, depending on what the offshore environment looks like, sand may either be piled up really in a narrow section, only in the upland above water portion of the beach, and then in some areas, the sand will be placed and moved below water to give a full template of the beach. And so whatever you have noticed in the past projects, the same type of project is going to be built today or this time around. Some property owners have provided what are called perpetual storm damage reduction easements. And this allows sand to be placed somewhat, in a small area on their property in order to have kind of a continuous design or a continuous line of sand. If the property owner did not provide that easement, and we actually went through another round of trying to get all these easements to make sure they're all in place recently. If you did not provide that easement, sand will either not be placed in front of your property, or it will be placed seaward of what's the erosion control line. And that is in a line that's already been adopted by the state and allows for sand placement anytime. And so we are going to be very careful to not place sand where anybody has not allowed us to, but where you have provided permission, there will be sand so that there's some continuity in the beach. Next slide, please. Throughout the project, several items will be monitored. There will be vibration monitors placed near the buildings, adjacent to the street ends and the access areas, so that vibration can be monitored to make sure that there's no structural damage as a result of the trucks driving past. Also, as the sand is pushed into the water, there will be turbidity monitoring to make sure that there's not a plume of fine material being released from the sand, because we would not want any damage to occur to the reefs. And so they take water samples throughout that project to make sure that the turbidity never gets too high that it would cause any risk to the reef. Next slide, please. Additionally, environmental monitoring will happen during the project and after the project to make sure that none of the near-shore hard bottom or coral or any other reef resources are impacted from the project. Specific species are monitored for related to coral, as well as Stephanie can describe for us, the sea turtle monitoring that happens actually throughout the year to make sure that there's no harm done to turtles, and as well as to the seabirds, which actually do nest in February and March, and make sure that there's no other risks to any other marine animals or resources. Next slide, please. So just wanted to raise, since it's a great opportunity to be speaking directly to, beach stakeholders, we do have sea turtle lighting ordinances in effect throughout the county. And from March to October 31st is sea turtle nesting season. And it's required that all lighting that's visible from the beach have a fixture height that's appropriate, that has the appropriate warmth or lumen output that's shielded, so there's no direct light to the beach, or even has a full cutoff, so the light is focused straight downward where it's needed for safety and not to just allow light to escape to the beach. It's really, really important to remember interior lights. The examples on the right show that, if you have all the lights on in your kitchen, that can be seen from the beach, and it's very disorienting for the turtles. And so we'd really appreciate it if you draw the shade and comply with the ordinances that are in effect. Next slide, please. So just to summarize the schedule. So for the segment 2 project, it is possible, or the Army Corps of Engineers is anticipating awarding a contract to a contractor in January of 2021. We will come back to you with an update in February. If project construction is going to begin in February. We'll also start updating you weekly after that point. It's very possible that the contractor may decide to not begin the project until the following November and do it all at once. So we won't have that information until February, but I just wanted to give you a heads up as early as possible. Next slide, please. If you can bear with me, we figured this was a great opportunity to give you more information about the Port Everglades Sand Bypass project that is also coming forward this year. This is an incredibly important resilience project for the county that has been in the making for over 2 decades. Next slide, please. So you may have noticed that there is a very wide beach north of Port Everglades Inlet and severe erosion south of the Port Everglades Inlet in the state park. And this is because no sand is moving naturally from the north to the south. It all moves offshore and stays offshore. So it's required that we have a mechanical process to take sand from the north and move it to the south beaches so we can restore the natural littoral transport and essentially save quite a bit of sand that's needed to bring to the segment 3, the southern beaches. And this will really, really help manage the entire beach, the countywide beach program more effectively. Next slide, please. So in order to build this kind of setup for mechanical transport of the sand, we need to build a giant hole at the north side of the jetty. And so there'll be an 11-acre sand trap that is dredged to a depth of 29 to 50 feet. It's going to be removing about 365,000 cubic yards of material. The jetty on the north end is going to be rehabilitated, so it doesn't allow sand to pass through into the center of the inlet and into inside of the inlet. And then there will be essentially a mechanism that sand can be dredged in the future from that sand trap and moved to the south every 2 to 4 years as it fills up. Next slide, please. And so this project, we are in procurement now and hope to award, the county will be awarding a contract hopefully in April of 2021. Dredging could begin in May, anytime between May and November of 2021. And then the jetty improvements will also be happening during that time. And then there are 2 mitigation reefs that will be built, artificial reefs that will be built as part of this project as well. Next slide. So this again just kind of shows the sand trap. So you can see visually where it is offshore. It's actually in front of like the Point of America's buildings, just north of the North Jetty of Port Everglades. Next slide. There's, as I mentioned, there is jetty repair work that will be done. There is rubble that was left from when the inlet was first dredged and when the jetty was first built that was left offshore. That's actually going to be removed, and it's going to allow for almost 7 acres of hard bottom to be re-exposed, and there's an opportunity for coral to naturally recruit there and for that to become a healthy ecosystem again. And as I mentioned, the reefs. Next slide, please. So if you are in the area of Port Everglades, you may see this type of equipment actively being used. You will see dredging offshore. You will see rock work being done by excavators and cranes on barges along the jetty. And then there will be sand placed either on the north end, immediately in front of Point of America's, or it will be moved to the south in the state park area. And then forever forward, every time the sand trap is dredged, that sand will be moved to the south and placed in the state park. Next slide, please. So just to emphasize that the 2 projects I described today, the Segment 2 beach repair project and the sand bypass project, do overlap somewhat. The Segment 2 project will be could begin as early as February, and the sand bypass project could happen from April to November. So you will see quite a bit of work happening this next year in 2021 and these two projects do overlap. So we wanted to be able to let you ask questions either on the segment 2 project today, as well as the sand bypass project, since they're both relevant to your area. So with that, next slide, please. Just to remind, you are welcome. We're going to unmute you. Well, please unmute yourself to ask questions. You can also continue to type questions into the chat window. You're always welcome to email us at resilience@broward.org anytime. There will be regular updates on the website. There will be regular updates on social media. You can call us anytime throughout the project. You can also call 311 if you ever need immediate assistance from the county. And of course, we will be working with your cities and towns to make sure they have all the latest information as well. And you can always outreach to them. So with that, let's begin questions, please.